Hi there, this is Jenny Dale, your English librarian, and I am making this quick video to talk about identifying useful subject terms using databases. So first off, just to get some terminology out of the way, a subject term, also called a subject heading, is something that's used to describe sources of information in a consistent way. So here's an example of an article page from the MLA International Bibliography, one of our databases, about an article called Teaching Indigenous Literatures for Decolonization, Challenging Learning, Learning to Challenge. And you can see here in this little screen cap that I've taken that there is a list of subjects. And when you see a list of subjects in a database and it provides clickable links, those are usually going to be official subject terms that have been assigned to this particular source by the people who maintain the database. So when you have subject terms in a database, you're often also going to have a thesaurus within that database, especially when you're using EBSCO database products, which are many of our really popular databases that we have access to. A database thesaurus is a form of controlled vocabulary, and according to this definition from the University of Texas Libraries, controlled vocabularies are standardized and organized arrangements of words and phrases, and they provide a consistent way to describe data. Metadata creators assign terms from vocabularies to improve information retrieval. So metadata is just information about information, and it is information that often is used to describe sources of information like articles or books. So metadata creators who kind of create these controlled vocabularies like a database thesaurus are trying to make it easier for users to retrieve the kind of information that they're looking for. And they do that by trying to be consistent in the way that they describe they do that by trying to be consistent about the way they describe information sources and the content of those sources. So when a database has a thesaurus, it's basically providing a list of the official subject terms. Now this can get really problematic. A lot of times these thesaurus term lists are not updated frequently and don't necessarily represent sort of the current scholarship on a topic. Library of Congress subject headings, which are used to describe books in the Library of Congress and also used to describe books in many academic libraries like ours, are really problematic in the way that they present information about people of different races or from different countries, for example. So knowing what's available in a controlled vocabulary like a thesaurus can be helpful to you in figuring out the right sort of terms to approach a search, but they're not always going to be the terms that you would consider sort of modern or necessarily the most relevant. But I still do want to talk a little bit about how you can use this within a database. So I'm going to switch over to the English 664 Research Guide, and I'm going to pull up the Finding Scholarly Articles tab here. And I'm going to jump into the MLA, Modern Language Association International Bibliography. And since I am off campus, it is asking me to log in, so I will do that. And what I am going to try to do here is I'm going to start with a broad search just as an example. So I might do American literature and teaching. And I just want to show you some of our options for accessing these kind of subject terms. So I will find, let's see. So I'm just going to start with this first one here. Just as an example. So this looks like it is a book chapter, an interdisciplinary approach to teaching gender in Western American literature. And when we use the MLA International Bibliography, we can use there are different types of subject terms here. So they have national literature classifications which serve as subject terms. They also have specific subject terms, and you'll see those listed. So in this case, the subject term listed is pedagogical approach or pedagogical approach, depending on your pronunciation. So I clicked on that, and what that is doing now, it's this DE stands for descriptor, which is how they're naming subject headings or subject terms within this database. And now it's taken me to the more than 15,000 articles or sources in the MLA International Bibliography that have been assigned this official subject term, pedagogical approach. So it could be useful when you're just trying to figure out, okay, how do I want to approach my search term creation here? So something I can do at this point, in addition to just kind of finding my descriptor or subject terms by doing searches within this database, I can also use their MLA Thesaurus right here. And what this does is it allows me to search through their list of subject terms. So you want to go to this second search box here. I recommend using relevancy ranked. Sometimes it will default to term begins with, but we don't always know what the term is going to be. So I'm going to start with teaching. So you can see that pretty much anything that's related to teaching that's included as a subject term in the MLA International Bibliography is here. I'm going to stick with this the basic one here, teaching, and I'm going to look at some of the narrower terms, which are things like collaborative teaching or looking at teaching of specific types of information like teaching of literature or teaching of writing. And then I also see related terms here like pedagogy. So I'm going to click teaching, the sort of main term I have here, and then I'm also going to click this term pedagogy. And then I'm going to click add, and what that does is it adds it to my actual search of the MLA International Bibliography. So I'm going to click search there, and it's going to take me back out to the main MLA International Bibliography, searching for anything that mentions teaching or pedagogy in its subject terms. And then I'm going to add something like American literature here, because that was 2,300 sources. And now if I use American literature in addition to these teaching pedagogy terms, it narrows it down quite a bit for me. So this can give me some information that helps me look to see, okay, what's being discussed in terms of American literature that also relates to teaching or pedagogy. So I'm going to go back to that research guide that we have for our class. And back to that finding scholarly sources. And I'm just going to pull up one of the other databases that I recommend. This one's called Education Source. So this time I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to use their Thesaurus, but I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. So pretty much everything in here is going to be in some way related to teaching or pedagogy, right? Because it's an education-focused database. So just like in the MLA International Bibliography, pretty much everything is going to be related to language or literature in some way. This is sort of approaching it from the opposite perspective. So what I want to do here when I'm searching their thesaurus is to try to see what they've got in terms of my topic area, American literature. So I'm using that relevancy ranked and I'm searching American literature. And now I can see the different sort of subject terms in their thesaurus for Education Source that helps me figure out where American literature shows up. So this actually looks like a pretty awesome subject heading, Study and Teaching of American Literature in Universities and Colleges. And in the Education Source Thesaurus, they have a little bit more information than the MLA International Database. So they usually have a scope note where it explains what this term gets applied to, which is kind of self-explanatory in our case. But I can click on this, just like I did in MLA. This is the same company that puts out these databases, so they work very similarly. And then I'm going to click this kind of broader term and this other broader term. And again, I can click add, and that's going to find me anything that uses any of these three subject terms. So I'm going to do my search here. And I get actually quite a bit of information. And you can see for each one, at least one of my subject terms that I selected is listed in there. And there is some great information to be used. So one thing I want to point out here before I end this little chat is if I click choose databases, it's really nice that I can search the Education Source database and the MLA International Bibliography together, which is a strategy that I recommend, but that does change things a bit with the way that the subjects work, because now it's trying to pull from competing term thesauri. So this may not necessarily work as well as it did there. And we might need to, in this case, focus more on keywords, which we can draw from subject terms. So pedagogy or teaching and American literature. And what this is going to do is it's going to try to bring everything that's from these two different databases that relates in some way to my content areas here. And as you can see, it's a whole lot of sources. But this can be something that is helpful in terms of trying to get a really comprehensive list of sources. And if you have a more specific topic, so for example, if you're interested in, say, critical pedagogy, not just pedagogy of any kind, that helps narrow things down a whole lot. So what I recommend when you're doing your searching here within the databases themselves, the actual sort of searching their content, not searching their terms, is to prioritize what's really important to you. Are you most interested in thinking about how to teach a specific author or a specific sort of movement or time period? Or are you most interested in focusing on research related to a specific pedagogical approach, like critical pedagogy, anti-racist pedagogy, something related maybe to decolonization and dealing with indigenous literatures? Think about what is most important to you to find within your sources and prioritize your search terms that way. So if you ever have any questions about doing research, about using these subject headings, about using the thesaurus in each database to help you sort of figure out the right terminology, please feel free to contact me. My email address is jedale2@uncg.edu, and you can also find my information on that English 664 research guide.